All right, this video is going to be about the design process that we went through to figure out what kind of ADU we want to build, if we want to build one, where, and all the details for our backyard. So this is an easement on the side of our property. Our neighbor's house is off to the left there. And one thing to consider is this one driveway here in the future will service the ADU, whoever lives there. It will service my potential garage on the right there, and our neighbors will be using it. So something to consider if you're thinking about having a small ADU with one person or the maximum size ADU with a family of maybe 3 cars, 3 drivers. Do you want to have a bunch of drivers, maybe 10 drivers, using this one easement to get out to the street? That's something that we decided we don't want to overwhelm our own house and our mornings with that much traffic. But anyways, let me just go through just the design process that we went through. It's from the design school at Stanford. It's basically a few steps. You empathize, get to know your customer, the end user, and then you define the problems and ideate. Think of potential solutions and potential setups for your ADU. Next is prototype, kind of mock up some things, and then test some out, and finally assess how'd it go. So for us, I'm going to go through each of these steps and kind of go through what we thought about for this. For empathizing, who's going to be the end user here? It's going to be me and my family living in the front house. It's going to be whoever lives in our ADU that's going to be built back here. It's going to be the neighbors who share our easement. It's going to be our neighbors over here who are going to see our new ADU and whose views are going to be impacted, whose sound situation is going to be impacted. There's a lot of people involved in building an ADU in your backyard. So for us, some people maximize money. They want to maximize income, and that's fine. But we actually want to maximize quality of life here. We want to have a nice place to live. We want it to be quiet. We want to respect our neighbors, have a good relationship with them. And that's going to influence how we design this ADU space. Next is define. So I actually kind of just defined what we're looking for. On top of that, we kind of want to have like a nice little outdoor area for people to have space to sit out and enjoy the outdoors, maybe have a little raised garden bed, something like that, on top of the other things I mentioned. So next is ideate. This is kind of my favorite part. It's just brainstorming. What could we do here? And when you ideate, you basically want to have a rain down of ideas. A lluvia de ideas in Spanish I kind of like it that way better. We could build a 2-story ADU. We thought about building an ADU on top of a garage. We thought about building a small 1-bedroom studio. Small costs up front. We thought about building the biggest possible ADU we can fit back here. We thought about doing an ADU over here and a garage for ourselves over here. We thought about no garage. We thought about doing a garage attached to the ADU plus our own garage. And there's probably other options that we could do. We also thought about what orientation and where do we want them to have sort of a front yard. We want to squash the ADU up towards the parking area and give them a backyard. Maybe preserve this raised level for a little patio, and they can have a nice view out over the hills. Do we want to squash the ADU to the back and maybe excavate all that, squash the ADU out to the back here, and give them a bit of a front yard? There's so many possibilities, and you don't want to overlook something and then build it and then go back and be like, oh, I wish we had done this. I didn't even think of that, whatever. So part of that process is maybe talking to friends and family, and when they ask what you're up to and how's the ADU process going, just tell them, oh, we're thinking about doing this, thinking about doing that. What do you think about this idea? And you show them a picture of what you were thinking about. Next step will help you ideate more, and then kind of help move you along. It's called prototype. So prototyping is you kind of want to get a sense of what it's going to actually be like when you have an ADU here. So for us, that meant considering a 2-story. What's it going to look like to have a 2-story building up here? We put out some ladders and climbed up to the ladders, and we're looking directly down into all of our neighbors' yards at that point. Sure, we had a great view over the tops of some of our other neighbors' houses, but do we want to sort of change the feel of this area with all single-story houses back there and then throwing up a 2-story right next to them and looking down into their yards? We built a fake fence out here just to kind of see a prototype of where are we going to end our yard for the main house. So the main house, we're thinking maybe have a fence here, and this would be a driveway into a potential garage over here, and then the ADU would have their parking over there, maybe expand that, have 2 spots. And so we kind of just mocked up a fence there with some sawhorses, and then up here we did some other stuff. We took some flags and kind of marked out the corners. I already took the flags out, but we marked up the corners just to see how much space is that going to take up. How much space is it going to leave between our potential garage and our ADU if we're going to do that? How much space are we going to have between the fence here? Is it enough to have a patio? Do we want to squeeze the ADU up and preserve this? And what would it look like? So also, what's the view going to be towards our neighbors' houses when we've got a garage here? So that helped, having the flags marking up the corners of our potential garage here to see, is it blocking on this left side here, is it blocking the view into our junior ADU's window? I'll do a video on that in the future. I've mentioned it before. But yeah, so moving on from prototyping, another important thing for prototyping, before I move on, is get some paper, graph paper, and cut out scaled size drawings of your property, of your house, of potential ADU sizes, and just move them around. Move them around on the paper to kind of see what can fit where on your property. That was super helpful for showing the city when we were trying to figure out what kind of and what size ADU we can build, and it was helpful for us too in deciding what we want to build. Next is testing it out. So we can't really build an ADU here and test it out, but we have lived in a house before where we shared the house with a tenant, a renter, and so that gave us the experience of what is it like to share a bathroom? What is it like to share a yard and a driveway? Fortunately for us, the driver or the tenant didn't have a car, so he didn't even need the driveway. But yeah, test things out, and then after that is assess. How did it go? Like I was saying, for us, it went pretty well. They didn't need most of the house. They only shared the bathroom, and they worked at nights. And they were at home when we were gone, and then when we were home, they were gone. So it worked out really well. So just think about what it's actually going to be like. And if you've had experience, maybe ask other people for their experiences with having another house in their backyard with tenants? What is it like to rent that out Airbnb style? What is it like to rent that out medium term style? What's it like to have a long-term tenant? It's good things to assess before you decide what you're going to build. So what we ended up on deciding was we don't want to have a huge family, like a bunch of cars in our parking area over here trying to use this easement all the time. So we ended up going with a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, and we're thinking renting it out to 2 people maximum, and there will be the 2 parking spaces for them. We decided on a single story, and to kind of preserve the relationship with the neighbors, preserve some privacy for us so they're not looking directly down into our backyard over here, and they're not looking directly down in other people's backyards, So we are probably going to build a garage for ourselves, maybe 8 to 10 feet from the edge of the ADU that's going to be out here. So the ADU is going to be, this is the back end of the property, pushed as far back this way as possible, which is going to leave us just enough space to build our own garage that will be used by the front house over here. And between them, I'm basically standing and looking down the space between the future garage and the future ADU out here. And they're going to have we decided they're going to have a front patio area kind of under this orange tree. Front patio, some nice stone steps coming up. My wife's probably going to build some of that stuff. Well, we're going to build it together, to be honest. And then back here, we're going to have to excavate out all of this, build some retaining walls back to hold back these plants on the hillside here, because there's a little bit of a slope here. It's like 5%. And then we've got to do a full demo of this pool, full removal and full infill, engineered, backfill, compacted every 6 inches or whatever it is. City has to inspect that. It's going to be like $16,000 to do. So it's kind of a bummer that we have to start at that. But part of the reason we're doing this is another design aspect is we thought about doing nothing back here and fixing up the pool and keeping this. We thought about renting out the pool through Swimply or something like that. And what we realized was, one, there's a bunch of there's damage. There's a huge crack here. So we're looking at a few thousand to fix that, a few thousand to kind of upgrade some of the electrical and plumbing as needed, because all this stuff is really old. The previous owner looked into getting it fixed up like 4 or 5 years ago. They were quoted at like $20,000 to get everything just kind of restored. I think a new pool deck and everything, but you can see there's cracks everywhere. The pool equipment, I gave it away. It was old and just kind of hanging on by a thread. And it was expensive to run the pool. It was like $500 a month if you consider the cost to own this much extra land in this area, the cost of chemicals, water, electricity to run the pumps, all the equipment, at least $500 a month. And for us, it was just not feasible to pay that, and it wasn't worth it to us. Like, pools are nice, but we would rather build an ADU here, give someone housing, and make enough money to help offset our mortgage to give us a little bit more free time. So instead of spending $1,000 or $500 a month to have a pool, now we can actually get paid and have more time to go maybe swim at a lake or swim at a river or someplace. So for us, that was kind of a consideration, and going through that design process really helped. So I don't know how long this video is at this point, but for us, that's what we're aiming for. These videos in the future, I'm just going to kind of go through the process of how this goes. Looking to try to get the California HFA ADU grant. I don't know how that's going to go, but these videos in the future are going to be hopefully around 10 minutes. And I hope they give a good chronicle of how this process is, how to do it well, and how to create, a great place to live for you and your future tenants and neighbors, and have the best experience possible with it. So stick around, like, subscribe, and keep a lookout for new videos, maybe every week or so.